Their neighbor, Savannah, asked Paige and Travis to take care of her daughter, Melanie, but she never came back. Paige and Travis ended up adopting Melanie and raising her as their own. Years later, there was a surprising knock on the door, and they found someone unexpected standing outside. "Can you babysit tonight?" Savannah begged her neighbor, Paige, who was all dressed up and ready for a night out with her husband, Travis. Savannah was a single mother and lived in an apartment complex in Orlando, Florida. "Oh, we actually had plans," Paige responded, unsure. She really loved Savannah's daughter, Melanie, as she had no children. She and Travis were in their late 40s and never had time for kids. But they got to babysit Melanie every once in a while, which was awesome. "Please, I beg of you, I have a date tonight, and this man might be the man of my dreams, a new daddy for Melanie." Savannah pleaded her case, and Paige pursed her lips. She looked at Savannah's desperate face, not noting that something more was going on. Then she saw beautiful Melanie, who was 3 years old and had the biggest eyes. Paige finally nodded, taking Melanie in her arms and grabbing the bag Savannah passed on. Thank you," the young woman added and ran off. She did not return that night. Paige and Travis worried for hours while Melanie cried for her mother. "Don't worry, sweetheart. She'll be back in the morning." Travis comforted his wife and tried to distract the baby. "I hope you're right. I'm worried about that new man she said she was meeting," Paige muttered, going to the door and peeking through the peephole. Soon it was morning and Savannah had not shown up. Paige went directly to her apartment and knocked many times. "Savannah? Savannah?" she called, getting increasingly worried and desperate with her knocks. Finally, Travis came and brought her back to their place. They decided to call the police, and Paige told the officers they were worried about this new man Savannah had met. Sadly, they didn't know more about this date. The cops tried knocking on her door too, but no one answered. Finally, one of them kicked the door open, and they were shocked by the scene before them. The apartment was empty. "Are you sure this is where she lived?" the officer asked Paige, who nodded but covered her mouth with her fingers in pure concern. Had Savannah abandoned her baby? She wondered in horror. "What happens now?" "We don't want Melanie to be taken away," Travis asked one officer while Paige entered the apartment with the other. They encountered several of Melanie's things, which suggested that Savannah had truly abandoned the baby. "We'll have to call CPS and the social worker will decide. You guys might want to get certified for foster care to keep the baby. Otherwise, she'll go into the system if we can't find her mother," the cop told Travis, who frowned at the idea. He stared at Paige from outside Savannah's apartment, and she met his eyes with a worried expression. It was like they both decided at that moment Melanie was not going anywhere. The police tried to find Savannah for many months, but their search didn't work. It was like she disappeared into thin air. Years later, an 18-year-old Melanie was getting ready for prom. She grew up with Paige and Travis, who had adopted her shortly after her mother abandoned her. Melanie was aware of what happened, but she didn't care anymore. She was raised well by the older couple, and she couldn't have asked for better parents. Paige was helping her with her hair when a knock sounded at the door. Travis was still at work, so Paige put the hair straightener down and went to see who it was. "Savannah?" Paige breathed in astonishment when she opened the door. 15 years had passed since she left her daughter, and for some reason, Savannah was back. Paige was understandably angry. "What are you doing here?" "I'm here for my daughter. I told you I would be back," she answered. The years had not been kind to her face. She looked almost older than Paige. Something had clearly happened, but the older woman didn't care. She scoffed at Savannah's words and used all the disdain in her heart to speak. "You have the gall to come here after you abandoned your child 15 years ago. She is my daughter, no matter how much time has passed." Savannah yelled in response to Paige's angry tone. "Where is she? Where are you keeping her? I will call the police immediately if you don't leave. Melanie is my daughter now, and you lost all your rights a long time ago." Paige continued, ice in her voice. "You don't get to say that. She's my daughter. I'll call the police on you." Savannah yelled and looked like she wanted to make a bigger scene, but stopped suddenly, looking behind Paige at something. Melanie had heard the commotion and came out of her room to see what was happening. "What's all this yelling, Mom?" she asked Paige, confused until her eyes saw the woman outside the door. "Melanie, darling, you look so beautiful. Come hug your mother," Savannah said sweetly and opened her arms. She tried to come inside, but Paige got in her way. "Come in and I'll have you arrested," she threatened the younger woman. "Mom, wait a second." Melanie spoke up and approached the door. She touched Paige's shoulder and gave her a small smile of reassurance. Then her eyes focused on the woman who had abandoned her all those years. "Savannah? My only mother is the woman standing beside me," she began calmly. "I remember crying the night you left me here. I remember everything. But I never lacked love because Paige and Travis had so much to give. I am their daughter, not yours. Please leave now." "Melanie, they had brainwashed you. I'm your mother. I know I made a mistake, but let me explain," Savannah begged, tears running down her face. Melanie didn't feel sorry for the woman at all. "I don't care," she said firmly, shaking her head and raising her eyebrows. "Go away or we'll call the police." Savannah looked angry and turned to Paige. "This isn't over," she said sharply before storming off. As soon as Paige closed the door, Melanie hugged her tightly, holding on for a few minutes. "Thank you for everything," she said, and Paige couldn't help but cry. It was comforting to know that all those years had been worthwhile. Travis arrived home shortly after, and they explained everything to him. He decided to call the police, and eventually, they got a restraining order against Savannah. Melanie didn't want anything to do with her, but the woman kept bothering them and showing up at their door. Eventually, Savannah vanished and Melanie went off to college, but she came home as often as she could, reminding her parents how much she appreciated them. They were the only family she considered real.